right, welcome to the Money Lab live podcast, episode number 68. There's never enough to there's always more money story. All right, welcome to another live broadcast of the Money Lab podcast from the Six Figure Academy. I am your host, Wei Hong from the Six Figure Academy. This is the podcast where we give you tips, strategies, and interviews with other entrepreneurs on how to create that ultimate six-figure entrepreneurial lifestyle, free of bad money stories, money anxiety, and stress so that you can monetize your dreams and execute your genius. Now, if you haven't already downloaded our free ebook From Money Anxiety to Six-Figure Mastery, make sure you go to go.thesixfigureacademy.com and get it there. Changing broadcast status. That's so funny. Okay, we're good. Now, if you're joining us live today, which you probably just caught me seeing some kind of an error box show up, which is totally awesome. You are not on YouTube Live, so you wouldn't have seen that. Make sure you get on Spreaker.com or download the Spreaker app on your mobile device and search for the hashtag the Money Lab so that you can join us in the chat room and ask questions, interact with us and our guest, or even request a specific topic to discuss that will help support you in your quest for the ideal six-figure lifestyle. Now, while you're there, subscribe so that you don't miss an episode and can catch us every week. For all of the ways to find us, go to thesixfigureacademy.com/radio for all the details. And if there's something you love about what you hear on this episode today, which you probably will because of the nature of my guest, and if you know that information could help someone you care about, remember, sharing is caring. Share the show to that person. Now, I'm really excited about my guest today, which you probably, if you are on YouTube Live, you could probably see her image and you see her face right now as she's smiling so brightly for us. I'll just do a quick little intro, just so for those of you who don't know Elizabeth DiAlto, she's known actually for her raw, honest, and grounded approach. For those of you who aren't fans of her already and follow her into the self-help and spirituality space. Now, she's actually the creator of the Wild Soul movement. She's an author and the host of the popular Truth Telling with Elizabeth DiAlto. And by God, we're going to hear some truths today because that's what she's famous for. Yeah, she's right. It's not that too messed up, right? No, she's been a teacher, a leader, a speaker, a coach, a trainer to groups for individuals. She's been in 3 different industries. And I'm really excited having her on the show because I've had an opportunity to hang out with her quite a few times. Oh my God, she's so fun. And I didn't even know how the show is going to go, but welcome to the show, Elizabeth. Finally, I'm happy to finally get you on the show. I mean, we had to kind of finagle and move some things around previously because of family, but now you're here.
I'm here. I'm so excited. Thanks, Wei.
Yeah. So right now you're in Malibu, right?
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that, but you're moving soon, right?
I'm moving next month. I'm so excited.
Oh my God, yeah. So how was that? I mean, a lot of people talk about, Malibu, but what is it like to live in Malibu? I know I have a few clients that are stuff like, but I want to hear from someone who actually has been living there and what are the pros and cons about Malibu for those that are considering it?
So here's what's really funny. I'm really not a person who does a lot of research, and I just knew that I had passed through Malibu a couple times, really thought it just feels like this magical place to me. And I didn't realize until I moved here and people started being like, ooh, Malibu. And I'm from the East Coast. I realized that telling people you live in Malibu is like telling people you have a house in the Hamptons.
Wow. Yeah.
People are like, what are you, rich now? Like, what are you, but yeah, like, and I really didn't enjoy necessarily, even though they're positive, all these assumptions that people were making about me. Cause I'm like, yo, I just thought it was a magical place and I wanted to live by the beach. You go to Point Doom every day and see the dolphins and the whales. And, so what's interesting is I'm 34 years old. I'm single and I realized that for me, like my demographic, living in Malibu is just like not really that much fun. Right? There's a lot of families. There's a lot of college students. There's a lot of older people.
Right.
And there's not really a lot of people in the middle in all the senses, the middle of age, the middle of like, even like financial status, right? Because there's a lot of really wealthy people here. And then there's like beach bums and homeless people. And so it really.
Wait, there's homeless people in Malibu?
Yeah. And I mean, and I don't say it to be funny at all. I mean, I say it to say it kind of is really representative of the disparity even in our country, how there's just like such a huge gap between like the 1% and then other people's reality in a much different way. And so being in the middle has been, in a couple different ways here in Malibu, has been a really interesting experience for me. It's still super beautiful. The nature is amazing. I'm still in LA where there's so many magical things to do. I'm quite far from my friends. So for me personally, it's been both really healing during a time when I needed to be isolated for a bit. But then once I was over that, I just craved to be like closer to my friends and everything I'm interested in doing and more people in like my peer group.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting because now that you mention it, I remember going to a client who actually lived in a trailer park in Malibu, which is
they have fancy trailer parks
and
here.
They're fancy. Yeah, they're really fancy. Hardwood floors and all kinds of interesting things like that. I'm like, so it's interesting. But anyway, I mean, this show isn't about your Malibu experience per se. I mean, it could be, but. But I think the big thing is, what I wanted to know is, because it's the Money Lab and everything like that, let's get that piece out of the way, because you are a successful entrepreneur. You're doing your thing. I still remember all the fun things that you try to do, that you do with your programs. And I think I was there at one time. You did a whole about pay what you thing, and you just like knocked it out of the park. It was like super awesome.
That's nuts.
But there was a time where money wasn't so free flowing per se, right? And so, and again, the whole premise around today's or this show is about people's money stories. What is it that we can do for those that are in it or out of it? How do we help inspire people to see there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to bad money stories and whatnot? So, what is your money story? What is the money story that you grew up with? In your family or as a child?
I really grew up with there's never enough, which I think is pretty common, again, for like people in my age range who were raised by baby boomers, who were raised by, I don't even know what you call the generation that raised the baby boomers, but they were alive during the Great Depression. I feel like that kind of trickled down to a lot of us. And so like that never enough, which goes hand in hand with like waiting for the other shoe to drop. So like even during times when there is enough and when it feels like stable and whatever, there's still that like there's never enough because what if something happens, So either way, it's kind of this cocktail of fear and lack, and that's pretty much what how I would describe mine.
Yeah. So here's what I want to do. Give me a second. It's so funny that we just talked about this whole technology thing.
Yeah.
It's not streaming. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to distill on an unschooled.
Cool.
And then I'm just going to edit it at the end and do my techie thing and connect all the video together.
Great.
How awesome is that?
Good thing you're tech savvy.
I know. Otherwise, we'd be sitting there going, we're streaming to nobody.
Hello, nobody.
Hello, nobody. What's happening? So anyway, okay, cool. So let's see. I think this should be good now. I think we're rocking and rolling. But yeah, no, I mean, and so when you grew up with that, I mean, there's always a teacher of that money story of there's never enough. Was it mom? Was it dad? Was it grandparents, uncle? Because you have a pretty big family, right?
I don't have a really big family, but it was more so, I would say my mom's side of the family, mom, grandpa, the kind of like, there's never enough. Cause, they would, every week she sits down to pay the bills and,
every week? You pay bills every week?
Yeah, my mom has this great ritual. She sits down and do it. To my memory, it feels like every week on Sunday, it would be like busting out the checkbook and other things. And what's so interesting is, fortunately for me, like there was enough. Like I never felt like I couldn't have something or, I never, and so if we were struggling, I didn't know as a child.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was just kind of like money felt stressful.
Oh, okay. So you felt the energy. It wasn't like you guys were financially suffering, but you felt the energy of that stress.
Yeah. And I think also once I got into middle school, I started to realize, kind of like similar to how we started with the conversation about Malibu, I started to realize the disparity because I had some friends who were like wealthy.
Mm-hmm. Like,
and
what
so
do you mean wealthy? How did you know they were wealthy?
Because their house was gigantic, you know, or they lived in like the fancy neighborhood, or their dad had a law firm and it was like in TV commercials, like advertisements and stuff.
Right.
And like you drove past the law firm, like it was a big thing on like a main street where I grew up.
Yeah.
Parents with fancy cars, like that, like traditional symbols of status and wealth abound.
And does that still kind of like play a role as an evidence procedure for you that that represents wealthy, or has that shifted?
No, you know what shifted that for me is in my late teens, early 20s. Have you ever heard of Cutco knives?
Yeah. Oh, I have a story around that one.
Oh, I want to hear it. But I sold Cutco. My sophomore year of college, I sold Cutco knives. That was the first summer I did it. I stayed with the company for 5 years. And what I noticed was I would get all excited when I'd be like pulling up to like a big fancy house. Mm-hmm. And I can't even tell you how often it was the people with the fancy cars and the nice houses who were telling me that they didn't have money or they couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, the more like conservative homes, regular cars, those people, it would be like no problem. And again, not like as a hard and fast rule, but it was just really shocking to me. I quickly learned that just because someone has a nice house or a nice car certainly doesn't mean that they have disposable income.
Right. No, it's. I think you're absolutely right. I have strategic alliances with a lot of these wealth advisors and everything like that. And there was a circumstance with one of my partnerships, my alliances, where he referred a couple people over, and one person was making well over $1 million a year, but he was spending $1.2 million a year. Mm-hmm. And another one was only making $80,000 a year, but he was only living off of 40.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. And on paper, that $80,000 a year guy was significantly wealthier than the $1 million a year guy.
Isn't that wild? Like that's what this whole, even like your tagline or whatever it is around Six Figure Academy. It's so fascinating because I know so many quote 6-figure entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But that's the gross number. That's not the personal income.
It's not the net.
It's not the net. And people are having to spend so much to generate that.
Right.
This is something I've been playing with this year is looking at what do I want my personal income to be? How much do I actually want to work?
Right.
And how much time do I want available to live my life?
Right.
So like I've cut back on my team a little bit. I'm not doing any paid advertising. I'm doing a little more private coaching and small group work again. And I have a lot more space and freedom for some things that I wanted to explore. And the gross number on my income this year will look different, but the net is probably going to look pretty similar.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, and we see it all the time when we start to suss out and clean out all the chaos, so to speak. All of a sudden, we clean up the systems and whatnot, and all of a sudden the gross might not change at all sometimes, and the net profit will increase.
Yeah, yeah.
Such a huge thing. So how did you break away from that belief system that there was that energy and that feeling that there was not enough so that you could actually go off and become an entrepreneur? In fact, how did you know that you wanted to become an entrepreneur?
I didn't actually until I had that Cutco job that summer.
Oh, cool.
Because I was an independent contractor. And so I was making my own schedule, setting my own appointments. And it was really my first taste of anything where what you put in is what you get out. Because I was basically like, wait a minute, I could just do as many appointments as I want, and I'm probably going to sell something on each one. And so that summer that I was 19, I sold $48,252 of knives.
Holy cow.
And awesome. After your first $25,000 in sales, you make 50% commission. So as a 19-year-old, first of all, I was number 10 in the country out of like 20,000 students selling knives that summer. And I made about $19,000, which the most I'd ever made in a summer job before that was maybe like $2,000.
Yeah. So that was a total breakaway, and you just open up all kinds of money channels at that point. You know, you're just like, holy cow.
Yes, and it really took me another decade to even start to look at learning how to manage my money. Because still by the time taxes rolled around the following year, I was like, oh, I was supposed to pay some taxes on that? That was $10.99. Like, I got a new car. Like, I was paying for a lot of my own stuff, you know, but just because I made more. And so actually that story of never enough perpetuated because I continued to do a variety of things throughout my 20s where making money wasn't usually the issue, but like keeping it, having it, saving it, like going in and out of debt. I still had a lot of those experiences. And in some cases on my business side of things, like I've a good amount of business debt right now. And so there's like navigating those ups and downs and just like really learning how to be more responsible with the money so that it actually feels like there's always more where that came from.
Right. No, I think that's a really cool kind of awareness piece right there because, I kind of went through the same thing as well where I started doubting my ability to make money when that wasn't the problem. Generating money generation was not the problem, but because it didn't stick around, I thought that was the problem. So maybe I don't know how to make money. But the reality was it's not so much about making money. It was about preservation of the money, right? Keeping it around or using it or like you're saying, managing it in the right way. And the struggles around managing it could be a function of that money story of, just making sure that you're making just enough or there's never enough that you have to keep on making more.
And so to answer your question, I took a big pendulum swing. I started studying the law of attraction. By way of like The Secret and then later Abraham Hicks. And one of the things that I don't know that I think I both misinterpreted it and I also think it's really mistaught is how you have to like generate the feeling of like how you want to feel before you can actually have something.
Right.
And so I would do things like buy a pair of $300 shoes to like feel like I was abundant. Except I was putting it on a credit card and actually feeling really stressed when I was doing it. And I was like, I don't think this is what they mean. I was like, well, do it. You have to like demonstrate your faith to the universe. And I'm like, okay, universe, I'm gonna buy these shoes. But then I ended up regretting it later and then paying interest on like these shoes and then barely even ever wearing them. So, like I'm thinking of a specific pair of shoes that I bought in 2012.
Do you have access to it? Can you show us?
I would have to go all the way downstairs to get them, and I still have them, even though I've probably worn them like 5 times.
Right.
Because I won't throw them away because I'm like, damn, I spent $300 on these.
I know, you can't throw it away.
And so again, I think there is a difference between like learning what it actually means to raise my vibration, like authentically for real. But also temper that with making wise financial choices.
Yeah. Cause there's a thing called Earth, right? And reality in terms of like this human body, right? And I think that's the biggest challenge with a lot of people who step into doing prosperity work and forget that, oh, wait, you're tethered to this body that actually has to create physical end results. And being able to bridge that is going to be critical in, say, you could make a ton of money from the metaphysical standpoint. But if you never bring into the physical, you're going to have some challenges, basically.
Yeah. And as well, even realizing now I'm gearing myself more towards like saving and some longer term assets and stuff like that, because I don't want to work for the whole entire rest of my life. I'm only 34. Like I got another 30 to 40 years of working in me, but I don't want to be 70 years old figuring out how I'm going to make some money next week because I wasn't doing any of that stuff to prepare for a future later on. Like there's so much like live in the moment. Yes, but like I'm not trying to work like this when I'm 70.
Right. You want to do what you want to do without having to let money be the reason why you're doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it sounds like, it's a continuous journey that you've been able to break away a lot from the original teachings of there's never enough. And getting to the place of, a more abundant type of behavior. But again, like you were saying that there's even more to explore as you grow into that space, huh?
Yeah. And one of the other things that I realized was the intersection between being of service in the world and earning money. And for real, for me, I have studied with a lot of different coaches and business people and marketing people and have realized that a lot of the strategies that people are promoting and sharing and selling as like the way to do things don't work for me personally.
Right.
If it gets me out of being in like my zone of genius and like truly like my highest service and what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
I find when I just like, the mantra for me is focus on service. When I just focus on service and being myself and sharing my gifts, it's very easy for me
Right.
to make money.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to like do a big marketing plan and a launch and this and that, like those things usually never go as well as they could or as I think they're going to go because it's too much strategy, which interrupts just like any authentic expression or service. And so I don't say that to say this is how it is, but that is how it has happened for me.
Right. No, and I absolutely agree. I mean, there's one of the big things that we push all the time here at the Six Figure Academy is that everybody has a unique way of making money.
Yeah.
And you know, these people out there that teach a certain way that is not flexible, it forces you to do it in a way that works for them and maybe a few of their select clients, right? But if you don't look like them, if you're not like them, if you're not built like them, it's gonna burn you out.
Yeah. And that's always been one of my biggest pet peeves about like this industry in general, because when people fail at things that aren't meant for them, they don't usually think to themselves, oh, that approach wasn't for me. They go, what's wrong with me? It worked for those 7 people, you know?
Right. And it doesn't help that they say, well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that, or they tear it apart and say you didn't do that enough, or you're not committed enough, or you don't know your why, or you don't know. Yeah. I mean, this is a soapbox. And what I love about having you on the show is that both of us can then, you know, step up and sit on that soapbox and just kind of rant and rave, because I'll just blame it on you.
Blame me. Fine. Blame it on your truth-telling friend, Elizabeth DiAlto. It's fine.
I know. See, there's that podcast. So tell me about the shift from that podcast, from where you were before, the Untamed, what is it?
Untame the Wild Soul.
Untame the Wild Soul, okay, which was basically, it sounds like it was a part of your journey of just releasing, opening up, and now finding this next piece, this evolutionary shift for you, which is the truth-telling.
Yeah, so Untame the Wild Soul was more of an extension of this movement I created, Wild Soul Movement, that's based around this sensual movement practice. The whole thing is designed to help women get out of their heads and into their bodies. And so a couple of the main themes of that are that, you know, every woman deserves to feel at home in their body and safe, that everything you've ever needed has always been inside of you. But also like the higher purpose of that was to help reclaim and redefine womanhood for the 21st century. Because, and part of my journey really was realizing like, how do I woman, right? Like there are a handful of socially acceptable ways for women to be that our culture is comfortable with and will like praise and honor. And then there's all of the other ways that our culture is very uncomfortable with. Because if a woman, it's like they want women to be confident and have self-esteem, but not too much because they get uncomfortable. And women who look a certain way can get away with certain things or of a certain culture. Other people might be labeled as like angry or this or that or whatever, you know, like there's many different brands and forms of feminism. And, you know, a lot of people are speaking up and speaking out with movements like Me Too and Time's Up, and many of these things could be beautiful, but kind of like anything, there's a shadow and there's a light side to that.
Right.
So, and people love to stereotype and people love to generalize. So for me, part of coming into my own version of womanhood and realizing like what my feminine gifts were, and also how to like harmonize and balance my energy with the masculine side too, because we all have both, no matter how you gender identify, even if you're not on the binary. You know, we're all unique expressions.
Right.
We're like our own unique, one of a kind recipe. Yeah. And so to really encourage people to explore that instead of trying to fit in all the ways our culture wants us to, because like we, especially women, we spend a lifetime trying to do that. We torture ourselves and in some cases really traumatize ourselves, deny ourselves, abandon ourselves. And to what end? We're still not being our real and true selves. Yeah. So Wild Soul Movement was all about that specifically for women, and that's still going and kicking. But on the podcast, one of the things that I realized was it was very much just part of this self-help industry that even though it looks more enlightened, it's just more of the same stuff wearing a different costume. Like we're not looking at like the deeper things. We're not looking at how more people are impacted. It's just like a very small section of the population. So I wanted to diversify. I wanted to include deeper conversations that have always been important to me, but I just didn't know how to talk about them.
Right.
And so I just started studying and educating myself a bit more so I could start to have those conversations and inviting different types of guests onto the podcast. And so switching over to truth telling felt more appropriate because I went from being primarily like self-help, spirituality, personal development, more to like society and culture and looking at what are the implications of how we're all living our lives, even within our spirituality or our evolution or whatever. And how is that affecting the collective? Right? Like, how are we looking at our privilege? How are we looking at things like racism and the impacts on marginalized populations, not just those of us who have, the privilege of having lighter skin or white passing or like all these other things. And, some people agree with these things. Some people don't. I'm never here to debate or convince people. But for me personally, I see how lots of marginalized folks are impacted. And if I could use my platform to help more people realize that stuff goes on, like, I'm definitely going to do that.
Yeah. No, I love the shift in the name, and I agree. It's a lot more universal. It actually taps into and gives you a platform to have a little bit more freedom to, tell the truth. I mean, there was a really cool book that I read years ago called Radical Honesty, and ever since I read that, it was all about, okay, well, yeah, what is the truth, right? And how willing are we to be, fully authentic and transparent about it? Because even if people are telling the truth sometimes, because of their desire to fit into society, to fit into culture, to fit into some kind of a construct, there's still a little bit of holdback. I'm sure when you talk to people, sometimes you feel that, what are you holding back? Just tell me. Just tell me. And what I love when I talk to you every single time, this is like, there's very little filter, if at all, sometimes when I'm talking to you, which is kind of like a breath of fresh air, actually, which is what I hear a lot from people after they speak with you. It's like a breath of fresh air. It's like,
people tell me that a lot. And the other piece of it is to do it though with as much kindness and compassion and love and generosity as possible. Because my friend Jade said this years ago, and I've always really kept this in the back of my mind since I heard him say it, which is that honesty without compassion is cruelty. And, I grew up in New York. I'm from the East Coast. Like that straight shooter, that's very much in my DNA. But I didn't always used to do it with so much kindness and compassion.
Right. Oh, that's such a cool. So honesty without compassion is cruelty.
Yeah, because like it could be radically honest to look at someone and be like, that dress looks like crap on you, but why?
Yeah. I'm going to type this in. Keep talking.
Yeah. So that's it, right? And we can share our own truths. The other part about truth is realizing how many different truths there are. What's true for me might not be true for you. My experience in the same exact situation as someone else might not be how they experienced it. And so, that there's my truth, there's their truth, there's the facts of the situation. And it's really a practice in radical honesty, like you said, but also radical acceptance because there's room for other people's interpretations of the truth.
Right.
And then, of course, there are some universal truths, but we live in a time where so many people are passing off opinion as fact.
Yeah.
And so, holding people accountable, part of truth telling is holding people accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, universal truth like gravity. Okay, great. If you jump off the table, you'll fall.
Exactly.
Unless you disconnect yourself in the matrix like Neo, and all of a sudden you can defy all of that even, in which case I can't even imagine how to determine the truth at that point. So,
at that point, what's happening?
So this is cool because your own journey in bringing this platform out and helping women to kind of like embrace it. And I love what you're doing there, getting them out of their minds and into their body, because I think one of the biggest challenges right now is there's this weird cultural push of making men not men, making women not women, and being vice versa or whatever. There's this weird thing that's going on, and I can't totally explain it in this moment. But I think that one of the biggest pieces that you help women do is really kind of own the fact that they're women.
Yeah.
And really embrace that fact instead of trying to be like grow a pair when you don't really need to.
Yeah. And I'd say for probably about the last 50 years or so, women were really taught to value themselves for more traditionally masculine qualities. So, and again, I say traditionally, and I know some people really don't like putting things in the frame of masculine or feminine because it is kind of a binary, but I only use those terms to describe the energies to just give some context.
Right,
you can
right.
call it whatever you want to call it. It could be left brain, right brain. It could be solar and lunar. Yeah, like it really doesn't matter, but like there is a fundamental difference. One is a lot more linear. One is a lot more forward-moving, penetrative, achievement-oriented, follow the rules, compete. Like those are traditionally the more masculine things.
Water and rocks.
Yes, and more feminine is like the softer, the more creative, the more compassionate, the more receptive, the more mysterious, the more unpredictable. Right? And so when we can find whatever is the appropriate balance between those things within ourselves, and everyone's balance is going to be different, then we can really operate in a way in life where we're not burning out, we're not stressing out, we're not pretending to be something we're not. And so it really just helps people to know themselves in a much deeper way while also honoring all of the aspects rather than, again, trying to pander to this external authority or this external expectation that really might not be true for you.
Yeah, no, and I think that's very accurate in what you described right there, because in our community, we often talk about the masculine energy being like rocks and the feminine energy being like water. And water makes the mountain lush and abundant. And without the mountain, the water would evaporate. You know, I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship that I think, as man gets in the way of man, we start to, or human gets in the way of human. I got chastised about that one time. I was speaking at an event. It's just, I notice you use the word man a lot, but then that precludes woman. I'm like, okay, human. I'm sorry, human. I mean, I meant man from a singularity standpoint. But anyway, so what happens is that's how we refer to that masculine feminine energy as well. So that one supports the other, and not like, like the Amazonians, or like men are just used for this and then we kill them.
Yeah. And and it really impacts relationships too, because honestly, I've studied a lot of the work of Alison Armstrong. And what I love about her platform is she comes from the place of that, most men, the great majority of men, and by men, I mean males in this context, are good. And quite often we're misinterpreting men's efforts to provide, protect, and help us, which is like what they're biologically primarily wired for.
We hunt.
We misinterpret a lot of men as being misogynistic or mansplaining when they're just doing what they're wired to do. Because most women have had experiences with some men who are not good men. And unfortunately, we take those handful of bad experiences we've having and we project it onto men in general, which is really not a fair thing to do, because there's a lot of,
right?
It is, but it's so justifiable and supported in the media, in movies. Like I've even been rewatching some of my favorite old shows, and like just some of the programming we get growing up is like, men are idiots, men are selfish, men are incompetent, you don't need a man, you could do everything yourself. And it's really dangerous because it gets us away from relying on each other and needing each other and asking for help and allowing ourselves to be supported. And again, it's not just about male-female dynamics, but like when we deconstruct it and go, wow, like we're built a certain way, you're built a certain way, and how can we allow each other to like be who we are? This is one way to look at it from an angle to see where we really mess it up quite often in general.
Yeah. And those cliche terms that are funny, when used in the right context, like the happy wife is happy life, so that the implication is that unless your wife is not happy, or unless your wife is happy, then you're not happy, or your life isn't happy, or everything. Everything just, so there's so many different, these little fun little quips that people use as a way to continue to support some of those constructs of belief systems and everything.
Yeah, yeah. And instead of getting really curious about, well, like one of the questions Alison Armstrong asked that I love is like, well, what if men aren't misbehaving? What if we don't treat each other as adversaries in relationships, but like, we're like try to find each other doing things right? What if instead of, being adversarial about our differences, we realize how much they're actually complementary and supportive, and like we could be picking up slack for each other. You know, I'm always going to err on the side of finding what's good and what's right and how people can come together and like enjoy an experience and leverage their own gifts and talents rather than going, well, you're not good at this and you're not good at that. Great. Like somebody else is.
Yeah.
Be awesome at what you're awesome at, you know?
Yeah. And I love this approach, and just in general about anything. And, you know, let's take out the context of men and women, but just having this approach of questioning and having the curiosity to say, is this really true on all areas of life? And as an entrepreneur, I think one of the big things, because most of us aren't raised to be entrepreneurs, most of us didn't go to school to become an entrepreneur, to grow up and have specific truths that we thought to be true on how money was supposed to be made or how business is supposed to be. I mean, the same things would probably apply. So doing this type of work, how has that impacted even your own perception on your own life, your own relationships, your own business, all those different things?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because probably once I passed through elementary school, for the most part, it was such in my family that my mom was the breadwinner.
Oh.
And, you know, my dad still worked and made money and stuff, but my mom made significantly more.
Okay.
And then once I was in high school, it was kind of like my dad was home most of the time.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mom worked in HR, HR executive for a number of years. She just recently retired. Oh, cool. And my dad is more of like a jack of all trades. He's multi-talented, multi-passionate. He's into golf. He's into art. He had a painting business for a while. He does lessons. He worked in telecommunications. Wow. So, and I identify in a lot of ways with my dad because my mom essentially worked at the same place for 32 years. She would often tease me. She's like, what would you do if you had to go to a job every day? I'm like, we're never going to have to know. But
I would say something like, I would die.
Right? It would be a problem, and probably least of all for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I didn't necessarily grow up in that traditional type of household. And as well, my mom has 3 sisters. They're all super smart and super powerful and super outspoken. And so I didn't really grow up seeing women be subservient or submissive or, you know, anything like that.
Yeah.
But I also didn't necessarily grow up seeing men be super successful or like the dominant one. So I think my expectations of things, it was almost like, here's what the culture says, here's what your immediate experience, and like, I kind of just, once I had that Cutco job and I realized I could kind of create whatever I wanted to, I was really into that.
Yeah. No, I mean, and for those of you who don't know what Cutco is this really ridiculously sharp knife that the majority of the demo that's done on these knives is just to show just how sharp it is. And
we cut rope. We use the scissors to cut pennies. Like,
oh my God.
They have a forever guarantee. They're made of super high quality. Like, I still have my Cutco in my kitchen. I still use it all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like a lifetime guarantee, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, even a couple of years ago, I sent a couple of mine back to just be sharpened, and they just sent me new ones instead.
Oh my God. Yeah. So my buddy, actually, I got to tell this story because it's just so out of this world.
I love this.
So my buddy was actually a Cutco rep, and he was telling me to get into it. I was like, oh, I don't know, that's this knife thing, you know, whatever. Okay. And then he showed up to my apartment one day, and he was like pale white. And I was like, what happened? He goes, I was like, what, did you not have a good day? He says, no, I sold a lot today. I was like, well, what happened? He was in Brentwood area. And so he was like, you know, selling knives, going door to door and stuff like that. And he said he was around the whole OJ area. This is before OJ did.
I knew you were, when you said Brentwood, I knew you were going to say something about OJ.
Yeah. But this is before all that happened. So he went to this really wealthy person's house. And, this is one of I guess these were one of the good ones. So he was doing his demo and everything like that. And the guy insisted on doing it himself. This is why I don't, believe you.
Oh no, I know what you're going to say.
And so he was holding something up, and he left his finger out, and he went, the guy cuts off his finger. But my buddy's freaking out. He's like going, oh my God. The guy doesn't. The guy simply picks up his finger.
No.
Calls his butler, assistant, whatever, is like, hey, can you call 911? I just cut my finger off, and we need to take care of it. Ends up buying 2 sets from my buddy. 2 sets, because he took full ownership that he shouldn't have. I said, I probably shouldn't have been doing this demo. I probably shouldn't have. And my buddy's like, I don't know, I'm so sorry. And he's a young kid. He's like, he's in school still. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He goes, he's like, listen, relax. But he showed up and I was like, so you made 2 sales. You told 2 sets, the biggest set, whatever it is. But that's the Cutco story that has like lived with me for.
Somehow in hundreds and hundreds of demos I did, no one ever cut themselves. Like a couple like nicks here and there, but nothing like that.
Oh my God. The guy won't, I mean, he showed it, he was like,
oh man, I can't.
Because, people who don't know how sharp it is, they think they have to put a lot of force into it.
That's right.
But you
work so hard with your dull knives. Man.
So for those of you who want a really sharp knife, reach out to Elizabeth. She probably has some contact somewhere.
I have friends who still run offices and regions with the company.
Holy cow. But anyway, so from there you got bit by the bug and you said, this is it. I want to be an entrepreneur, right? So what was your journey like and how did you get to where you are today? I mean, from an entrepreneur standpoint, did you ever try working for somebody?
I did. So I was a Cutco sales rep and then I went through their management training program. And I went through their like recruiting and training. And when I graduated college, I opened up my own office. My territory was Washington, D.C. And so for like 2 years, I ran that district, recruiting and training my own sales reps. And when I burned out on that, and I did burn out, I thought, let me just get a corporate sales job. I would love to just get a paycheck, not be the one in charge, not have to hire and train everyone and run all the interviews and do all the stuff. And so I actually did 2 things. I did a recruiting job that I lasted at for like 2 weeks. Because coming out of being in the Cutco world, again, it was like, what you put in is what you get out. And I was a hustler. Yeah. And so I go to this recruiting job where they were like, so the training is going to take you 2 weeks. I was done in like 2 or 3 days. And I was like, what are the rest of you doing that this is taking you? Because I was used to like, again, what you put in is what you get out. Right. Not like kind of the corporate thing, which is like figure out where to coast and we'll all coast together. I was not used to that, which also meant like quite fast people were like not into me in that office.
Why? Because you were making them look bad?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so then like every day by like 2 or 3 o'clock, I'd be done with my workload and I'd be like, well, what do I do for the rest of the day? And sometimes I'd check my email. People were like telling on me. My manager would like call me into his office and be like, come to my attention. And I'm like, you can stop saying it like that. People are like tattletaling on me. We're grown-ups and I'm being tattletailed
Truth-telling already back then.
Right? So after 2 weeks of that, I was like, y'all, I'm out of here. And then actually I went to work with someone who I used to work with at Cutco who ran the district office in New York for Cintas. So I sold uniforms to like fancy hotels and like front end and back end hotels, the Nederlander Theater Group in New York. So I had like some really interesting clients. So I'd be like schlepping uniform samples all over the city and like measuring like a whole staff of like ushers for a theater. Oh, cool. And I did that for like a year. So I technically, did that. And then as I was phasing out of that, I decided to go into fitness and I became a personal trainer. So again, like technically I kind of worked. I mean, I worked for and at the gym, but I taught my own classes. Right. I had my own clients. Like it was still very much like you're entrepreneurial in nature because you're getting your own clients, you're making your own schedule and doing all that stuff.
It's business, right?
Yeah. So I did that for a couple of years and then I didn't see how, like going into fitness from sales, I took like a 60% pay cut.
Yeah.
And I didn't see how I was ever going to make that much money in fitness. Right. So I decided to go to grad school for exercise physiology because I thought maybe I could get like a corporate wellness job. So it wasn't that I was like super attached to being an entrepreneur. At that point, I was getting later into my 20s and I was like, I need to live. So I'd be stressed out about money all the freaking time.
Right.
So
there's never enough, right?
There's never enough. That was still running. But I didn't even finish a semester of grad school. I was like, this is so boring. I want to shoot myself. And that fall, this was 2010, I went to my very first conference for like entrepreneurs by a woman named Marie Forleo. During
B School.
During Marie Forleo's event, this guy named Todd Herman spoke. And I just remember Todd telling this story about how he was this high performance coach and he had all these friends who were like academics and PhDs. And they were like, man, I wish I would have realized that I could have do what you do. And I was like, what? I like literally decided to quit grad school while I was there at that event.
Wow.
And instead I did Marie's mastermind. I was like, I was going to invest all this money in my education anyway. Why don't I just learn how to actually be an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And so in 2011, I started my online fitness business. And for a couple of years, I was doing that, like making, like if you still go to my YouTube channel and you go back, like you're going to see like health and fitness videos.
Oh, cool. I'm going to do a search afterwards.
Yeah, literally, you can search how to get rid of armpit fat, and I have a video that has like hundreds of thousands of views that my boyfriend at the time helped me make because he was into video marketing. So, you know, all this evolution. But it was as I was in the fitness and as I was helping people work out that I became much more interested in working in and what was going on under the surface and all those things about studying feminine archetypes and womanhood and the feminine and masculine energy and all that stuff. And so I started studying energy work, Reiki, like all this other stuff. And eventually that's what led me to kind of synthesizing all these different things that I learned over the years into what would become Wild Soul Movement. And, you know, as the body of work continues to evolve now.
Yeah. So what specifically do you do now? Let's talk about that in terms of, you know, what is it that you do for, is it just still for women or just people in general? So
mostly women, but I've started, so there's two branches of what I do. There's still the whole Wild Soul Movement lane, which is, you know, women's empowerment, reclaiming and redefining womanhood for the 21st century. Get out of your head and into your body. We use movement practices, mantras, meditations, other kinds of spiritual practices, rituals, embodiment work and stuff like that.
Right.
So I have Wild Soul Movement. I have a Patreon now where I do bi-monthly Wild Soul Movement sessions. I do bonus podcast episodes. And that's really for people who are more interested in like the spiritual deep dive side of things.
Okay.
And so that's a fun way to just be with my online community in that sense. I retired my original Wild Soul Movement program. I'll probably bring it back sometime next year, but it just needed a breather. But I also do train and certify Wild Soul Movement teachers so they could teach in person and real life classes. Okay. And I teach Wild Soul Movement. I do weekend workshops and retreats as well. Okay. So that's all the Wild Soul Movement stuff. And then on the other end, it's leadership coaching. So really for creatives, innovators, entrepreneurs, leaders, people who really want to fulfill their potential and make a difference. That's who I do my private work with. So I like to do things in immersions. I describe myself as like, can I curse here or no?
Sure, I guess.
I'll say crap instead. I call myself like, I'm kind of like, there's no shortage of like leadership or business coaches. I call my work, it's like, I'm the person you come to in like the crap or get off the pot moment. Okay. So like someone had this issue, they've thrown everything at it and they like are finally ready to resolve it. Yeah. That's me. Or they have like a goal or a dream that they've been like procrastinating or dragging their feet on and like they're like, it's now or never, like come to me. I typically, I like to do in-person immersions or, you know, for people who are farther away, I'll do like a 3-month deep dive kind of thing. And then we'll see if we need to go from there or not. I'm not someone who's like trying to work with people every year and get them to re-up for the rest of their lives. I'm like, let's get this thing happening. Right. Or heal.
Yeah. So what's one of the, tell me a story of one of the people that you've been able to take that journey through to kind of tell them where they were before and where they are now.
So I have so many fun ones. You know, I'll tell you a recent one, for example. One of my clients does some really innovative and revolutionary work in the space of grief. Cool. Her name is Sarah Nannon, and she has spoken publicly about working together, so I'm not breaching any privacy. She has a book called Grief Unveiled, and she does this just this beautiful work, specifically helping widows create their life after their loss. So there's a lot of ways that grief has been handled traditionally, and a lot of it is regarded as, well, if you lose your husband, like your life is over, and now you're this grieving. The rest of your life is actually
grieving widow.
A grieving widow. And so Sarah is really all about how do you live? How do you live this next phase and the rest of your life? Right. And so, you know, she's someone who had worked with some other business coaches and done some other programs and things, and people were trying to tell her to do it their way, not her way. And so we recently did an immersion, and we kind of mapped out how she's going to do things her way. And actually, cool, tomorrow I'm going to interview her. She's launching a podcast. I'm going to interview her for her podcast to like open it up and kind of introduce her to her own audience. Yeah, yeah. So stuff like that, like really creating the space for people to be who they are and do things the way that feel aligned with their own expression, with their own integrity, with their values and their priorities. Like, she's a mom of 4. She lost her husband when her 4th child was only a couple weeks old.
Oh, Jesus.
So she is like a warrior, and she has a lot to share and give and teach and help people with. Without
giving up her feminine side.
Exactly. Yeah. Without having to be super, super, super masculine. She's also met another amazing man who's going to be the stepdad to your children. Like, you know, and even that, it's like there's so much taboo in moving on with your life when you've lost someone. And so she's going head into that. So it makes sense that she would come to me.
Yeah. And so that's, I mean, that's amazing work that you do there in terms of being able to, how do people get a hold of you if they want to do something like this? They want to break through being stuck, you know, and embrace their femininity and still be able to step up and be a really successful person. Because I think from what I hear, everything that you do in both the Wild Soul movement and this whole leadership development thing is not having to sacrifice your unique expression in this world in order to become successful.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So how would people connect with you? Do they go to your website? Do they, or is there any way they can engage with you on some level?
Yeah, I'm building my own ElizabethDiAlto.com website. It'll probably be ready at the end of the summer, but wildsoulmovement.com. But you know where everything always is? I love Instagram, and I use that convenient little link tree thing. So if you go to my Instagram, Elizabeth DiAlto, and click the link in my profile, whatever I've got going on is usually linked up in that link tree. Or you can go to any of our websites, send me a private message, use the contact.
Literally, the Instagram is Elizabeth DiAlto.
Yep. And then whatever, the link in the bio is always the same because you click it and anything that's going on usually comes up. And the Patreon is patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. So that's more for like women who just like kind of want to come play with me and hang out in community with other women like them.
Okay, cool. So for those of you who want to see where this, I'm putting it in the comments at the Spreaker.com site, and you can get you can get her Instagram username there. The Patreon link is there.
Thanks.
And that quote, "Honesty without compassion is cruelty." I love that.
And that's not my quote. That's my friend Jade Teta said that. Teta.
Jade Teta said the quote. Because I'm just typing here, so it's like,
it's
okay,
fine.
great. But no, I think that's a brilliant quote, and I think that should be made into a meme.
Yeah,
and it should be made viral.
We'll meme Jade.
I
love it.
Meme Jade. Is that an actual term right now that I can meme somebody?
Yeah, I think it's a verb now.
Yeah, I'm saying I can meme you. I'm gonna meme you.
I'm gonna meme you. Yeah. I've been memed.
Yeah, you've been memed. I you know what I can do is I can meme your quote of a quote.
Like Michael Scott. You watch The Office?
No, but tell me.
Oh my God, Michael Scott in The Office writes the Wayne Gretzky quote: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Wayne Gretzky. But then he puts all of that in quotes and puts Michael Scott.
Quote within a quote. Right?
Yeah.
That's actually a Milton model thing. It's like an extended quotes thing when you quote somebody, but then you're quoting that person. So the unconscious mind suddenly there is a connection with you and that quote. So it's a kind of a fancy thing. So even though you told me JT said that, I'm still going to associate with you on some level.
I know. That's why I keep telling you it was shade. And also too, if it's just easier for people, they could email hello@elizabethdialto.com. There's like a million, it's 2018. There's a million ways to reach me. So whatever's easiest.
And if they just Google you, they'll find you.
Yeah.
You know, I tell people that all the time. I say, how do I find you? I was like, I'm not very hard to find. Just Google
Not
me.
hard to find.
You know,
all
it's
over
not
the
like
internet.
my name is John Doe.
That's true. Right. And there's not another Elizabeth DiAlto. So like you'll find me.
Yeah. That's why when I was like, send over the Skype request, I was like, I'll just look her up. I was like, oh, there she is.
There I am. I think that's one of the few things that still says Liz though. We couldn't change the Skype name.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So for those of you, her name is Elizabeth, not Liz. So if you happen to find anything that says Liz out there, that's a deprecated version of her.
Thanks.
Right. But, you know, I have a feeling because there's some cool things that are happening in your world right now. And as the new direction and new evolution and the new shift starts to continue to flesh out, I would love to have you back on again just to kind of share that journey and share what you've done to kind of create more success and where you've taken your money story to the next level. So
yeah,
would you
I'm always up for that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. So it's about 12:54. There's a few more things that I would love to hear is, in your journey and working with because a lot of people struggle with working in our space, and when we talk about our space is like that metaphysical side of things. When we start to talk about the things that are not physically tangible per se, but are just as relevant and just as important. What do you have as an advice for people who are struggling, just making ends meet, working that way, but don't want to give that up? Because you've obviously been able to make that happen, make it a full-time thing, and live quite the life off of that space. What do you?
I really encourage people to get to know themselves. I love personality typologies and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Myers-Briggs, human design, any tool, the Colby Index, wealth dynamics.
Oh, you and I need to talk. As I don't know if you know, last year we launched a company just around this human physimetric human assessment test, patented.
Yeah, we do need to talk about this. I love anything like this, not to put us in boxes, even astrology, right? Not to put us in boxes, but just so we can see how we're built and how we operate.
Right.
Again, to help us when we're doing the comparison thing, which all humans do, and thinking we should be doing something that maybe we shouldn't be. Because here's the thing, I'm built for this. I am not risk averse. If anything, the term Danielle Laporte used once that I really loved was risk erotic. I have a high capacity for risk and uncertainty, especially with money, especially with putting myself out there. My mom will tell you since I was little, I don't care very much what other people think of me. I am a very sensitive person, but not sensitive in the sense that like being easily offended.
Right.
And so in a lot of ways, I am built for this. Like I'm made for this. And I always overemphasize that and I'm also very extroverted. I need a lot of time to myself, but I'm very extroverted. A lot of people are not built this way. And so to look at what I do and go, oh, I should do that wouldn't work for them.
Right.
But I have so many friends who are also thriving and successful, and they're much more introverted, and they're way less built to be like the face of a brand or like have such a public platform around like truth telling and like be so out in the world, but they're like the secret weapon. They're very successful. People just find them. A lot of what they do is word of mouth. They don't necessarily have a big online platform. And so I just really encourage people to get to know yourself first and just understand that although there is so much out there that teaches people how to be successful and to do it quickly, no real long-term success happens like overnight, right? It still requires, like I'm sure a way you can share, there's so much trial and error. There's so many things that we've put out in the world that have flopped, that we've put out in the world that have gone well, that we're either still doing or we're not doing anymore. Like it's constantly, you need to have a constitution to constantly be trying things out, be willing to let things go, be cool with failing and getting back up. So like, it's really not for everyone. So like, I like to overemphasize that because it's really glorified, even the like work from anywhere, work from your laptop. You guys know how lonely that is sometimes?
Yeah,
I
totally
crave human connection. Like I go work at coffee shops just to sit around other humans, even if I'm not working with them. So I think in a lot of ways, this life is over glorified and people aren't super honest about what it's actually like. I wear my pajamas most days for like half the day. It's not glorious. Or fancy. I also don't love traveling that much. So I don't love schlepping. So like, you're not going to find me the person like my office for the day and like, cool. But there's so many things to it. So I just encourage people to try and see, like you got to let everything be an experiment and see how it goes. And the other thing is, this was my experience with fitness. When I turned my passion into my job, I lost my passion for the thing.
Oh, interesting.
I loved fitness my whole life from age 12 years old on. And after I became a personal trainer and after I did the online fitness business, I haven't loved fitness the same way since. So also be really careful not to kill your passion by trying to monetize it.
Right. Or monetize it in the wrong way, do it in a way where you sacrifice your passion for the sake of money or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean.
No, I love this. I love what you're saying here is that how important it is and goes hand in hand with kind of like the big shifts that happen in our business, which is we can make that big promise now because of what we do. we help people find their unique way of making money because everybody's different.
Everyone's different.
Everybody's different. Stop trying to be somebody else. Just be you. And then let's work and optimize you to be the best possible version of success that only you can create in this lifetime. So I love that. I love that you said that. It's so perfect.
Yeah. And that's my marketing plan. I noticed this. The more I can just be myself and enjoy myself, that is what magnetizes people to me.
Yeah. And as you keep moving further away from the there's never enough to there's always more, then that's how you
There's always more than enough when I'm being myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you found that. So that's so cool. I love that you shared that. And I think it's so awesome. And I can't wait to have you back on the show just to kind of check in and see where things are. And we can talk about other things as well. So very cool. So again,
Thanks,
you got it. So again, hopefully you can stick around right after the show because there's some things I want to talk to you about. So now,
great.
But again, go to the comments and everything. If you want to find Elizabeth DiAlto on Instagram, go to Elizabeth DiAlto. Just Google it, or go to patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed, or you can just go to Spreaker.com and read that cool quote. quote in a quote, honesty without compassion is cruelty. Or you can just email her, hello@elizabethdialto.com. Cool. All right. So that's our show for this week. Again, if you found this episode to be valuable and know of someone else that could benefit from what we talked about today, share it. Okay, don't be a stingy. Don't be a Scrooge. Review us on iTunes, Spreaker, or like the episode on Google or YouTube Live. And did you know we even have a Facebook group called The Money Lab? Join us there to dive even deeper into bad money story elimination strategies. Okay, so that's a wrap. Take the week to apply the knowledge from today. Have an amazing week, and we'll catch you next week on the Money Lab Live podcast, where we'll have Primoz Bozic, a six-figure entrepreneur all the way from Slovenia. This is Wei and Elizabeth from the Six Figure Academy signing off.
Bye.
Bye.